"You don't belong here, old man. This is for real veterans." That's what the security guard barked, his tone sharp and dismissive. The target of his words? A frail figure bundled in a tattered army jacket, shivering against the biting wind. People nearby shifted uncomfortably. A few averted their eyes, others stifled chuckles behind sympathetic frowns. But the old man said nothing. He didn't argue, didn't protest. He simply stepped back into the cold, clutching a neatly folded flag close to his chest like a lifeline. Less than 10 minutes later, the solemn hush of the museum's marble foyer was broken by the thud of boots. Heavy boots, polished to perfection. A 4-star general stormed through the grand entrance, his face thunderous, his voice booming. "Where is the man you just humiliated? If you believe respect is earned through sacrifice, not appearance, comment honor below." Charles. Charlie Hayes had been waiting for this day. He'd marked it on his calendar weeks in advance, circling December 7th with a trembling hand. Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. The National Veterans Museum would be hosting its annual tribute, welcoming all who served. Charlie was 87. His hair had turned silver long ago, his back curved by the weight of time. He no longer drove. His eyes struggled to focus on anything beyond a few feet. His hands trembled with age and his knees ached with every step. But his memory? Sharp as ever. He remembered Korea, 1952. The searing cold, the chaos, the camaraderie. He remembered Vietnam, 1968, the jungle, the fire, the unbearable silence that followed each firefight. Every year, every deployment, etched into his soul more deeply than any scar on his body. To reach the museum, Charlie had mapped out 3 bus transfers. He rose well before dawn, taking his time to lace up his old combat boots, polish them as best he could, and press his faded army jacket. A bronze star still clung proudly to his chest. He studied his reflection in the mirror with a quiet nod. His granddaughter had offered to drive him. "Grandpa, please, it's no trouble." But Charlie had declined gently. "You've got your own family to care for," he told her with a smile. In truth, he preferred making the journey alone. Some pilgrimages are meant to be solitary. The wind bit into his bones as he approached the grand staircase leading to the museum. Banners flapped overhead, honoring those who served, a tribute to our heroes. Charlie paused at the base of the steps, breathing in deeply, then made his way toward the line of visitors. Families clustered together, chatting cheerfully. Younger veterans stood tall in clean, modern uniforms. They presented their military IDs or VA cards to the guard, who nodded with rote politeness. He looked barely out of his 20s with a buzz cut and bored expression. When Charlie reached the front, he smiled warmly. "Good morning, son." "ID?" the guard asked, not even glancing up. Charlie's smile held. "I served in Korea and Vietnam. 38th Infantry Regiment, then later in Special Forces in Nam." Now the guard looked up, briefly. His eyes scanned Charlie's weathered face, shaky hands, and old jacket. "Sir, we need proper identification. A VA card, military ID, or discharge papers. Anyone can say they're a veteran." "I haven't had an ID in years," Charlie said calmly. "But I brought this." He pulled from his coat a laminated photograph, himself as a young soldier, standing beside his unit in Korea, his name printed in the margin. The guard barely glanced at it. "That could be anyone. No ID, no entry. Rules are rules." A woman in designer heels whispered behind him, "Sad. There's always some homeless guy trying to sneak in." A couple others laughed quietly. "Sir," the guard gestured to the side, "please move along." Still, Charlie didn't argue. With quiet dignity, he turned and stepped away. Pride kept his back straight. The cold sliced through his jacket like glass. He held the folded flag tighter, shielding it not just from the wind, but from the sting of humiliation. He didn't see the sharply dressed woman watching from across the street, her expression stormy, her phone already pressed to her ear. Inside, the ceremony was in full swing. The museum director delivered impassioned remarks about courage and sacrifice. A children's choir sang "God Bless America." Videos played of young veterans, handsome, articulate, camera-ready, speaking of service, pride, and patriotism. Today, the director proclaimed to applause, "We honor those who stood in harm's way, the brave souls who chose service above self." Meanwhile, Charlie sat outside on a bench speckled with snow, the folded flag resting in his lap. It had once draped his brother James's coffin, killed in Korea. That flag was all he had left of him. Irony wrapped around him like the wind. Inside, they applauded an ideal. Outside, the reality sat cold and forgotten. Charlie knew this duality all too well. America loved the image of a soldier, but often forgot the real ones who lived beyond the parades. Across town, in a sterile federal building, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Vaughn strode briskly down a hallway, her jaw set, her boots striking sharp notes against tile. A West Point grad with 2 decades of service, she had little patience for injustice, especially involving veterans. She knocked once on a heavy oak door and entered. "Sir, we have a situation at the Veterans Museum." General Marcus Reed looked up. Decorated, respected, a man forged by combat and diplomacy alike. The 4 stars on his uniform didn't define him, his integrity did. "What kind of situation?" he asked. A veteran was denied entry, elderly, by his jacket insignia, Korea and Vietnam eras. No ID, security turned him away. The general's eyes narrowed. "Name?" "Charles Hayes." Reed stood slowly. "Charles Hayes?" "Yes, sir. I ran a check." She placed a folder on his desk. 38th Infantry. Bronze Star for Valor. Purple Heart. Special Forces, 1968. Reed opened the file, then went utterly still. "Charles Hayes pulled my father out of a burning tank at Incheon. Saved his life. If not for him, I wouldn't be here." He closed the folder with purpose. "Clear my schedule. Get the car ready. Now!" Minutes later, a motorcade rolled toward the museum. Black SUVs, moving with urgency and silence. Inside the lead vehicle, Reed sat upright, his face grim, not as a general, as a son. At the museum, the guard was still at his post, still dividing who belonged from who didn't. Then the boots returned. He looked up and saw stars, 4 of them, approaching fast. "Sir, welcome to the—" "Where is he?" Reed cut him off, voice like a blade. "Sir, the veteran you turned away." The guard stammered. "He didn't have ID. You said, 'You don't belong here, old man.'" Reed repeated it loudly. "Isn't that what you said?" The crowd went silent. The museum director rushed over. "General Reed, what an honor." "There's a problem," Reed said coldly. "You're making speeches about honor while your staff turns real heroes away." The room froze. Cameras turned. Phones lifted. Reporters sensed the shift in narrative. Reed raised his voice. "You had a Medal of Honor nominee outside, and you shut the door in his face." A gasp echoed. "That man, Charlie Hayes, saved my father's life, burned his own hands pulling him from a tank under fire, and you dismissed him because his ID expired with the century." He turned to the crowd. "Medals tarnish, paper fades, but valor does not." Lieutenant Colonel Vaughn approached. "We found him, sir. Outside." Reed nodded. "Bring him in." Outside, Charlie sat still, unaware of the ripple he'd caused. A young officer approached, saluted sharply. "Mr. Hayes, General Reed requests your presence, sir." Charlie blinked. "General Reed?" "Yes, sir, if you'll come with me." Confused, he stood with help. As they walked, he saw the crowd, the black SUVs, the general in full dress uniform at the top of the stairs. Reed stepped forward and saluted. "Master Sergeant Hayes, I'm Marcus Reed. My father was Lieutenant William Reed, 38th Infantry. Charlie's eyes lit up. Little Billy Reed's boy. Yes, sir, you saved his life, and now it's time we honored yours. One by one, soldiers snapped to attention. Civilians followed. Silence wrapped them in reverence. General Reed offered his arm. There's a ceremony inside, Sergeant, and it's missing its guest of honor. Together they walked up the stairs, the same ones Charlie had been denied just an hour before. The guard stepped aside, ashamed. The director fumbled a quiet apology. Reed silenced him with a look. Save it. Listen instead to a real veteran. Charlie took it all in silently. As they entered the main hall, he leaned over. You didn't have to do all this? With all due respect, Reed replied, yes, I did. By morning, the story went viral. News outlets replayed the confrontation. Social media lit up with hashtags, #Honor Charlie, #Real Heroes. The museum director resigned. The guard was reassigned after a public apology. Policies changed. Now, any veteran, even without ID, would be treated with dignity. Charlie avoided the spotlight. I'm not the story, he said. There are thousands like me. Still, his story sparked something. Volunteerism rose. Veterans received renewed attention. And at the museum entrance, a bench was placed with a plaque, reserved for those who served. Each Sunday, Charlie sat there, sharing stories with children, laughing with younger vets, not as an invisible old man, but a living bridge to history. Because you never know the battles someone has fought just by looking at them. And true respect means looking deeper,